When is this woke stuff ever gonna end? It is now considered offensive in British Columbia for British Columbians to refer to themselves as British Columbians. You can't make this stuff up. It's real. Now, before we get into this story, I wanted to share this video from Ryan Kulbaba talking about offensive language and wondering if you're even referring to the things correctly. Check this out.
Guys, are you like me? And whenever you see the 2S LGBTQI plus moniker, you ever wonder what letters or numbers I'm supposed to add to that? Or whether I'm looking at the newest 20-odd inch LG UHD TV model?
Yeah, it's hard to tell. You don't know if you're looking at an electronic device or you're talking about people and what they're offended by. What are people offended by today? Well, it turns out in British Columbia, they're kowtowing to sensitive people that say that the word British Columbian is offensive to refer to yourself as. BC instructs people to stop saying British Columbians because it's offensive. This is crazy. This, of course, is David Eby, the NDP premier of the province of British Columbia, with all those British Columbians in it. Yeah, that's right. British Columbia government says the province's own name isn't inclusive enough to use. How do you even, how am I going to make my way through this one? This is crazy. A writing guide for Indigenous content published by the province's NDP government urges people to refrain from referring to themselves as British Columbians. This isn't, you're not allowed to call other people British Columbians. It's offensive to call yourself a British Columbian in the presence of certain people. This is really just, this is taking the cake. This really is. The term British Columbians is often used to reference people living in BC. Whoa, we're rocket science over here. This term includes Indigenous peoples who may not identify with it. For many, they identify as members of their own sovereign nations and do not consider themselves part of one that is actively worked to assimilate their people, the guide reads. Well, guess what? You might want to refer to yourself as Canadian, perhaps. You have no say in somebody calling you a North American. Just throwing it out there. Guess what? I'm not offended if anyone calls themselves a North American, or perhaps a person of the Americas. Or how about even an Earthling? An Earthling. If you consider yourself an Earthling, guess what? I won't be offended. And you know why? It's because I don't take offense to things like that. It really is the case. You don't give offense, you take offense. And you can just choose not to be offended by these things. It really comes down to that. But it's more a case of there's equity. There's there's valuable things to being offended. And this is why this is all happening. The guide update on January 26th aims to promote more inclusive language and avoid outdated and offensive terms. You wouldn't want to be, left behind and saying something that's so yesterday. I'm offended. It provides recommendations for authors and communicators regarding terms to use while talking about Indigenous issues. Notably, it advises against using the term British Columbians. It's also a so-called exclusionary nature towards Indigenous people who may not identify with the label. Well, you know what? It's inclusive. It's inclusive. Calling people British Columbians. Your nation is in British Columbia. Your province is in Canada. We're all Canadians. Get over it. I'm sorry. It really is crazy. And if I call myself a British Columbian, I don't, maybe you don't like that, but that's you just pound sand. Notably, it advises against the term British Columbians. That's right. Instead, it suggests employing the phrase people living in BC as if that changes anything. To be more inclusive of diverse populations, including immigrants. Guess what? I'm going to break the news here. Breaking story. Immigrants that live in British Columbia are British Columbians. If you reside in British Columbia, you are a British Columbian. Furthermore, the guide includes a section on outdated terms to avoid discouraging the use of terms such as native, traditional, tribe, band, and original groups. For some reason, those words are all not allowed to be used anymore. Again, get with today. The verbiage is much different than it used to be. Traditional, i.e. traditional knowledge, traditional theories, territories, traditional way of calling people things, makes it seem like it's only applicable to the past and not the present. So that's why feelings are hurt there. When referring to ceremonies, please check with the local nation's website assistance on whether to include traditional explained. The guide True North writing about this. This is just when used out of context, it has negative connotations. The word artifact now is offensive to be used. It goes on to say so much more. The move follows previous efforts by the BC government to control speech, such as the removal of the 750 outdated gender-based terms from provincial regulations in 2022. Wow, it's so much happens in 2 years that things that were recommended are now things that are offensive. It's amazing. It's amazing that the world has been moving so very quickly. These changes are part of the Better Regulations for British Columbians initiative. Estimated terms like he, she, himself, herself, father, son, and aunt from the vocal vocabulary. At the time, Parliamentary Secretary for Gender Equity, yes, that's a job in the government, Parliamentary Secretary for Gender Equity, not equality, equity, Grace Lord defended the change, of course she did, stating that using inclusive language removes barriers to services and protects the people's rights. No, this isn't inclusive language. This is all exclusionary. It's all just like the magic flag that you see at all these magical places. It's an exclusionary flag. It's not meant to include everybody. It's meant to include in-group preference, and then everybody outside of that group has to kowtow to that. And if they don't, you're a horrible person for some odd reason. However, critics argue that such measures represent government's overreach and prioritize political correctness over practicality, and that's exactly where we're at with that. I can't believe that this is something that people are actually considering in real terms. But this is what happens when you give people an inch, they take a mile. Absolutely. I have no idea where the end of this whole thing is. I thought it was already ridiculous. Now it's gotten so ridiculous that British Columbians are told that they should not refer to themselves as British Columbians, as that may be offensive. Let me know what you think in the comment section down below, because this is just absurd to me. Tell me why I'm wrong about this, or tell me that you agree. I don't know. Let me see what you have to say about this. We'll see those comments in the comment section down below. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe if you haven't yet subscribed to the channel, and we'll see you in the next one. Keep on trucking.